standing by. Sipho, what's the latest on your side?
Subsection 3 of the Constitution, organs of state have a duty to assist and protect Chapter 9 institutions and to ensure that such institutions are independent, impartial, and that they are treated with dignity, as well as that they are effective in the execution of their functions. So we are disappointed that this court found that that kind of language in the minister's application was irrelevant for this purpose. We disagree with that. We think it was relevant because it applies to both Part A and Part B of the minister's papers. But we were further disappointed that this court found that the functions of the NPA, the functions of the Minister of State Security, and the functions of the police can be suspended even when those issues, insofar as they relate to the remedial action, have got no impact at all in the minister's application. But we've just received the judgment now. We will go back to study it and map the way forward.
The judge also had some scathing remarks there, saying that some of the findings by the public protector against Minister Gordhan are nonsensical and that they are vague. I mean, how do you receive that as the Office of the Public Protector?
Well, that is equally disappointing, considering that we were asking this court to deal with the use of that kind of language in reference to the public protector, and that the learned judge also resorted to that kind of language. But as I said, we will take advice upon studying the judgment and map the way forward.
But the judge also saying, though, the language that was used does not feature in terms of what has to be dealt with, in terms of what is being brought forward here. So what will the public protector do after this now?
That's the point I just made, to say we disagree with that position because we feel that that language applies to both Part A and B of the minister's application. So we disagree with that. But as I said, the public protector will have to go through this judgment. It's quite a long one. And then at that point, we will be in the position to indicate where to from now.
Is she going to move? Is she going to resign? Is the public protector going to resign?
No. Why would she resign? She's not going to resign. Of course, we are aware of things that are happening around her, people applying to or calling upon the legislature, the National Assembly, to do certain things and so forth. She's not going to resign. Should it happen that those proceedings come to be, she will comply with all of that and set her side of the story in that process and take it from there.
A quick one. Doesn't this ruling, though, dent the public or protector's image into the public?
Definitely not. You will recall.
But part of the argument, though, was that if this judgment does not go into your favor, the public would lose interest, would not have trust in the office.
What we should understand is that this was not a review application. It was an application to interdict the implementation of the remedial action pending review proceedings. So the court was not dealing with the review itself. It was just something that we, in our own papers, and our counsel said as much, that in the normal scheme of things, we would not, oppose interdict in this sense. But we did that purely, among other things, because we felt that this office would suffer an impairment of its dignity, given the kind of language that the minister was using, accusing the public protector without any shred of evidence that she is part of state capture and all of that.
Do you now regret opposing this application, saying that now you've lost? And as you are stating to us right now, normally you don't oppose interdict applications to suspend remedial actions, except for the review process, because we know this is not the review application in its entirety, but it's an urgent interdict application for the remedial actions. So do you now regret saying that it's another loss for the office?
We could never regret it, because it was not something taken lightly. It was well thought out and properly considered.
Another cost order. Is this not becoming too costly for the public protector, an office that continually bemoans the scarce resources it has And is it not unwise to continue bringing frivolous litigation like this? If on the findings it's found that it is vague and nonsensical?
The public protector operates in a legal field, just like a court of law. And so people are entitled to make these kind of applications whenever they feel aggrieved by the findings of the public protector. It's just like a court. I'm sure you are aware that every now and then a judgment of a court is taken on appeal because there's some party that is unhappy with it. So it goes without saying that we will always find ourselves in court, especially given the fact that in 2016 the Constitutional Court put the matter of whether or not our remedial action is binding beyond doubt. And we saw as early as then, even long before Advocate Nkwewani came into office, that there was going to be a spike in the number of reviews. Already by the time she came into office, we already had 16 such applications. So it is going to happen well into the future, even after her term of office. So it's not something that we have control over, because people, once you decide, there will always be a party that is unhappy, and you cannot control that.
Do you think this interdict sets the tone for the entire review application?
No.
Considering the language that was used, that the findings are vague and nonsensical, do you think it sets the tone for the entire review application that's ahead?
I don't think so, but with respect, I would like to stop it here. I think I've said more than it is enough for one day. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you very much. Well, that's Oupa Segalwe, the spokesperson of the Public Protector, responding to that judgment. Again, of course, the court ruling that the remedial actions of the Public Protector will be suspending pending the review application by Minister Gordhan. But certainly the language that was used by the judge here, saying that some of the findings by the Public Protector against Minister Gordhan were vague and nonsensical, it sets a tone of, perhaps that's what we're thinking, of what's to come when the actual review application comes to forth. Now, of course, we know that the argument that was made by the Public Protector here was that if they lose this interdict application, it would dent the credibility of that office. So does this mean now that Minister Pravin Gordhan has won this round? Is the credibility of that office damaged in some way? We'll have to find out, but certainly it's a win for Minister Gordhan at this point in time. But we must emphasize this was an interdict, an urgent interdict to stop the implementation of remedial action. The review application process on its own, it is still set to continue.
Sipho, while we still have you, just give us a sense of the mood in court. We know that last week when the arguments were presented, there was a lot of EFF support, and another group, I've forgotten their name now, who are saying hands off the Public Protector. Was there that kind of support today, especially with the bus strike around Pretoria today? Did that have an effect on people coming through?
Well, today we haven't seen the EFF supporters. There hasn't been much activity outside court, and we did actually start quite late as a result of that bus strike here in Pretoria. We were supposed to start at 9:30, but council was unable to make it here on time, so we started the judgment, I think, at around 10:30. That is half an hour delay due to the bus strike. So we haven't seen supporters outside court here. And I think during arguments last week, some of the people that were in court got a sense perhaps that the Public Protector might not win this one. If you listen to the speech that was made by EFF leader Julius Malema immediately after the day of argument, saying that even if they lose here, they're going to approach the Constitutional Court. So there was a sense that perhaps this might not go well, even during the argument stages. But yes, the judge, before delivering her judgment, she meticulously went through all the arguments that have been made before her, and essentially finding that it would cause major harm to the reputation of Minister Gordhan if this urgent interdict is not granted, saying that urgent interdicts have been granted in the past, and it does not mean that the report in itself there may be something wrong with it, but rather it means you need to allow that process of reviewing the report while then suspending the remedial actions. We know the remedial actions, of course, is that Public Protector called for the president to take a disciplinary action against Minister Gordhan in 30 days' time. And we know the president was against the idea of taking a DC action against his minister, and he came here in the court as well, stating that he was against the remedial action by the public protector, and saying he would rather await the entire review process. Now, also it's quite interesting that the public protector's office argued that under normal circumstances, they don't oppose urgent interdicts in this court, but they felt the need to oppose this interdict by Gordhan because of the language that was used, the language that seems to suggest that public protector Mkhwebane has been captured by certain political forces, that she is part of this so-called fight back plan, and that perhaps she may not be competent to run the public protector office. So they said that some of the language in the application by Minister Pravin Gordhan was very attacking, and it was attacking the persona of the public protector, as Buziso Mkhwebane. So they were driven by that to file this opposing motion against this application. But yet again, it's a loss for the Office of the Public Protector, and we shall now wait and see when the review process gets underway what will happen. But for now, what this means is that President Ramaphosa will not take any disciplinary action against Minister Gordhan.
I know you've just spoken to the public protector's spokesperson, but just in terms of the people, the involved parties, give us a sense of who was in court this morning.
Well, this morning we've had the representative from the public protector, but and of course counsel to receive the ruling by the judge, and we did not have any representatives from the EFF or the presidency. It was really just procedural proceedings that took place here today to receive this ruling. Of course, as you mentioned earlier, that when this application was being made, it was a different story outside, with lots of EFF supporters coming out in their numbers to support the EFF as they were admitted as a party to these proceedings. But again, I mentioned that there was a sense already from the arguments made that it was certainly not going to go to the way of the public protector, especially concerning the public protector, as legal representatives themselves admitted that under normal circumstances they don't oppose such applications. But the argument that was made here by both the public protector's office and that the lawyers for EFF was that if this interdict is granted, it would cause damage to the Office of Public Protector, and that people will not have trust in the ability of the public protector to carry out her duties. And I remember that Advocate Masuku, who was representing Public Protector Mkhwebane, said then if this interdict is granted, it would mean all of these allegations against this current public protector are true, allegations that she is incompetent and that she does not seem to grasp the law to the best of abilities or to the level that's expected of a public protector. So she said if this interdict is granted, it would mean that those allegations are true. So by no means they really did want to win this, but yet again, it's a loss for this office. Does this mean that the office's credibility has been damaged? Well, we're not the ones to say that, but it's not something that the Public Protector's Office would have hoped for.
Sipho, thank you so much for that summary of events this morning.